Hey guys, welcome to my hardcore Skyblock series. You're probably wondering, day one? What, did you start a new world? Don't worry, this is still the same world. I'm just changing how I upload the series. Instead of dragging out 3 tiny days every week, I'm taking you through 25 full in-game days every week. 4 weeks from now, this entire 100-day journey will be complete. In these first 25 days, I build my cobblestone generator, as well as my cactus and passive mob farms. I was able to complete my hostile mob farm on the 25th day, too. Talk about cutting it close. The scary part was doing all this while trying to survive the nightly phantom attacks. I'll also be narrating a popular no-sleep story on Reddit called The Left-Right Game, written by NeonTempo. Hope you enjoy the gameplay and the narration. Let's jump in.
I always heard that great stories happened to people who knew how to tell them. Rob Guthard was the exception. When I first sat at his kitchen table that morning, drinking the surprisingly good coffee he'd made for me, I listened to him describe the last 65 years of his life, as if he were reading aloud from someone else's shopping list. Events that would break most people took him maybe one sentence. His first job, his second wedding, his third divorce, all passing references, barely skimming the surface of a life packed with chaos. And yet, even delivered with his flat affect, Rob's story was extraordinary, wild, fascinating. It didn't need embellishment, it carried itself. By the time he was 21, he told me, he'd already been married, had a son, worked as a farmer, a mover, a boat engineer, and had grown estranged from his spouse. He said it all so casually, I thought I'd misheard him. Of course, my wife started to get dissatisfied, he said. I was away a while. For work, I asked. Vietnam. I blinked, almost choking on my coffee. You were in Vietnam. How was that for you? I ain't never been back since, he said. That was it. That was everything he offered me about his first marriage and the Vietnam War. He told me he'd had 4 marriages after that, and even more jobs. After the war, he worked with a firm of private detectives and got shot at by the mob once. Later, he was a courier, which, according to him, was how a poor boy from Alabama got to see the world. I been to most of the continents with that job, he said. I been to India. You from India? My mum and dad are from India, yeah, I said. See, I could tell. He described being arrested in Singapore after one of his packages was found full of white powder. 3 days in custody before someone bothered to check the substance. It was chalk. His cellmate during that brief stay, Hiroji Sato, became a friend. And when Hiroji invited Rob to stay with him in Japan, Rob accepted. Fresh off the end of his 3rd marriage, he stayed there for 5 years. The Japanese are good people, he told me, good manners. But they got all these urban legends and ghost stories that Hiroji was crazy for. Spent all his free time chasing them down. Like, you heard of Jorogumo? I don't think so, I said. Well, she's this spider lady lives in the Joro Falls round Izu. Meant to be real pretty, but real dangerous. Hiroji took us out there to get a picture of her. Did you ever meet Jorogumo? I asked. Nah, she didn't show. None of them did. I didn't believe at all until we went to Aokigahara. Aokigahara, the suicide forest. Even saying the name out loud felt unsettling. It's a stretch of woodland at the base of Mount Fuji, notorious as a destination for young people looking to end their own lives. Hiroji, Rob's ghost-obsessed jailmate turned best friend, had been going there for decades. He had taken Rob to chase Yurei, the ghosts of the forest. Did you find anything there? I asked. Well, I ain't gonna ask you to believe me, he said. But I was a PI, professional cynic. Even I can't deny there was a spirit in those woods. That was when his tone changed. His hands stayed steady on his mug, his posture relaxed, but something in his voice sharpened into focus, like we'd finally arrived at the part he actually wanted to tell. It walked up to me through the trees, he said. Looked like static you see on a TV screen, but it had a human shape, almost. Almost? I asked. It was missing an arm. It reached out to me, but I bolted out of that forest so fast. Hiroji never saw it, holds it against me to this day. From that point on, his sentences grew longer, his voice brighter, almost childlike. That encounter in Aokigahara, he said, had changed everything. It was his entry into the supernatural. He started chasing urban legends, monsters, and folklore. Bloody Mary, the Jersey Devil, Sasquatch, he claimed to have looked into them all. I figured if one was true, then who knows how many others could be, he said. How many have you proven so far? I asked. Since Aokigahara? He gave a small shrug. Ain't none of them had any proof to 'em, except for one. That's why I called you guys up. He couldn't hide his smile then. That one exception, he told me, was something he'd found on a paranormal message board in June 2016. A strange post about something called the left-right game. The whole thing had a level of detail you don't see in other stories, he said. What details grabbed your interest? I asked. Logs, high-quality pictures. The guy documented everything, said he wasn't going to play the game anymore. I think he wanted somebody to keep investigating. And you were that somebody, I said. That's right, I set about trying to verify his information right away. And how did it go? Well, he said, it didn't take long to realise the left-right game is the real thing. He explained the rules. You get in your car and drive, taking the next possible left, then the next possible right, then the next possible left again, repeating the pattern indefinitely. Left, right, left, right. Eventually, if you kept going, you were supposed to end up somewhere. New. Simple rules, he insisted. Not so simple to follow. There ain't all that many roads where you can turn left and right and left and right and keep going, he told me. Most of the time you find yourself at a dead end or needing to turn in the wrong direction. Phoenix is built on a grid system, so you can keep going left and right as long as you need to. Did you move to Phoenix for the left-right game? I asked. That's right, he said. I tried not to let my incredulity show, but I'm not sure I succeeded. Selling your house, packing up your entire life, and moving states just to play a game you'd first seen on the internet felt extreme. Rob gave me a little knowing smile. I could read the expression as easily as he read mine. You'll see, his eyes said. Just wait. I wouldn't have to wait long. His 9-page submission to our show hadn't just included his story, it had included a packing list, clothes for 3 days, a pocket knife, matches, bandages, and a list of practical skills the reporter needed to have. The ability to drive, basic vehicle maintenance, first aid training. He didn't just want to talk about the left-right game. He wanted to take one of us with him. He wanted it to be me. He left later that afternoon to run errands, prepping the run, as he put it, and showed me to the guest room. We parted on good terms, but fully aware of how the other saw this situation. I thought he was a charming obsessive chasing a fairy tale. He thought I was a naive cynic on the edge of a revelation. As I listened to the front door close, I realised that by the next afternoon, one of us would be proven right. I woke the next morning to the sound of someone knocking on wood right next to my head. When I opened my eyes, Rob was in my room, standing over me with a breakfast tray. I got bananas, strawberries, chocolate syrup, he said. We got some more downstairs, but I wanted you to wake up to something good. We won't be eating this stuff on the road. He had made waffles. It was sweet, disorienting, and just a little unsettling. Waking up in a stranger's house to find that stranger already in my room. I reminded myself that he was a 65-year-old man who lived alone. Boundaries probably weren't something he often had to think about. Besides, the waffles really were delicious. We hit the road at 9, he said as I ate. I wanted to give you time to get ready before everyone shows up. There are other people coming, I asked. We got a 5-car convoy on the road today, he said. They'll be here in an hour. The idea of a convoy took me by surprise. I'd assumed this game was Rob's private obsession and that I was here as his chosen witness. The thought that other people, complete strangers, had also signed on for this trip was as fascinating as it was worrying. Later, when I carried my pack out onto the porch, Rob was already outside, waiting, sitting in his camping chair and watching the street. I thought you'd be running a few more errands, I said. If you ain't prepared by the morning of, he said, you ain't prepared. Fair enough, I said, then added, oh, Rob, is the garage locked? The inside door won't budge, and I wanted to mic up the car. Yeah, it's locked up. I'll open it for you, he said, then checked his watch. In fact, it's about time I wheeled her out. Fair warning, Miss Sharma, she's a thing of beauty. To Rob, beauty looked like a dark green Jeep Wrangler. He rolled it out of the garage with obvious pride. 4 doors, hard top, winch, heavy-duty tyres, a full light rig on the roof. What do you think? He asked. I think you're 2 caterpillar treads, short of driving a tank, I said. He laughed. Yeah, I fixed her up good. Put the winch in, heavy-duty tyres, light rig, on top's LEDs. They'll make midnight look like noon, but they don't use hardly any power. Aren't Jeeps usually open top? I asked. Not all. This is the Unlimited. I like to have a covered car when I head on the road. Inside, the back seats had been removed to make room for supplies. Jerry cans of petrol, barrels of water, rope, toolboxes, snacks, neatly folded clothes. He had packed like he was heading into the wilderness for weeks, not hours. I wonder if the rest of the convoy will take it this seriously, I muttered. We got Apollo coming up in 10 minutes, he said. No one else has given me a time. I sent the schedule weeks ago. This always happens. His name's Apollo, I asked. That's his call sign. Apollo Creed, I think he said. Why are you using call signs? Did I not tell you? He said. Oh yeah, we're going to use call signs on the road. Keep communication clear. What's your call sign? I asked. Ferryman, I waited. What's mine? I thought about it, he said. I was thinking London. You're from London, right? I'm from Bristol. Bristol, he shrugged. That's fine, I guess. Less than 10 minutes later, a blue Range Rover turned the corner. Rob jumped up and strode to the edge of his driveway as the first of our guests stepped out. Apollo vaguely resembled his fictional namesake, dark-skinned, tall, solidly built, though it was obvious he couldn't have been less interested in fighting. This Apollo was all easy smiles and big, goofy laughter. How far have you come? I asked him. Out of Chicago, he said. Took 3 days of hard driving. And you know Rob from the forums? I asked. Everybody knows Rob, he said. Rob's the god. He burst out laughing at his own joke. Rob headed for the Range Rover and started talking shop. Tyres, clearance, loadout. He glanced back at his own Jeep with open pride. Somehow this 65-year-old farmer's son had become a respected figure in some corner of the internet. My dad is roughly Rob's age and only recently discovered copy and paste. 2 more arrivals followed. A pair of Minnesotan librarians in a grey Ford Focus, brother and sister, both older, both shy. They introduced themselves as Bonnie and Clyde, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. We would have gotten here sooner, Clyde said, but we had to drop by to get some blankets. Pleasure to meet you, Ma'am. Pleasure to meet you too, I said. Would you be the journalist? He asked. That's right. He turned to his sister. You used to write for the town paper, didn't you? She nodded silently. It was clear he did most of the talking for both of them. Next were Lilith and Eve, English Lit students from New York University and owners of a paranormal YouTube channel called Paranormicon. Unlike Bonnie and Clyde, they had no trouble talking. As soon as they learned where I worked, they tried to recruit me for a trip to Roswell. We have a friend there, Lilith said. He's been seeing some... He's a seismologist, Eve cut in. Yeah, and he's been recording readings over the years that show subterranean movement, predictable movement. We're going to see him in July, Eve said. We could work it around you if you're free. I'll have to check my schedule, I said. Okay, cool, let me give you my email, Lilith replied, already digging for her phone. They hurried off soon after to film an intro for their channel, taking a quick interview from Rob, who seemed happy to be on camera. The last 2 cars arrived almost at the same time, a strong-willed older woman who went by Blue Jay in a grey Ford Explorer, and a younger man with the call sign Ace in a low, polished Porsche that looked wildly out of place beside the Wrangler. Rob walked straight over to him. You think that's going to help on the road? He demanded. I didn't write that. It's my car, Ace said. What am I meant to do? It's my car. You didn't read my itinerary. You got nothing packed in there. I did read it, sir. Okay, calm down. I have a bag. I won't ask you for anything. Well, I know that's true, Rob replied. It was clear they were off to a bad start. Ace took a phone call almost immediately. Blue Jay, when I tried to speak with her, seemed politely uninterested in talking to a journalist. Once everyone had arrived, Rob handed out radios and battery packs and gave a quick safety briefing. Seatbelts at all times. Stay in formation. Communicate often and clearly. As I listened, a little seed of worry started growing in my chest. These people clearly liked Rob. They respected him enough to drive across the country for this. If the game turned out to be nothing more than an odd pattern of turns on a map, what would it do to Rob? When the briefing ended, he called me back to the Wrangler. You ready for this, Bristol? He asked. I'm ready, I said. Okay then, he replied. Let's hit the road. We pulled out of his driveway, the rest of the convoy falling into line behind us in order of arrival. Apollo, Bonnie and Clyde, Lilith and Eve, Blue Jay and Ace. Turn after turn, Phoenix slid by. Sunlit streets, grid-like neighbourhoods, school zones, gas stations. At first it felt like nothing more than a long but ordinary morning drive. On the radio, Apollo finally asked what we were all thinking. How many more we got, Rob? He said, laughing. As many as it takes, Rob answered. I could tell he wanted the radio reserved for actual communication, not Apollo's jokes, but he let it slide. I doubted he'd be as indulgent with Ace. We took a right, then another left. After a while, Rob glanced over at me. You're wondering the same thing Apollo is, he said. What do you mean? I asked. You're wondering how many turns we're going to take before we hit some wall or something, before you find out this is all just a story. Does that disappoint you? I asked. I'd be disappointed if you weren't thinking something like it, he said. But now we're on the road. I gotta say something and you gotta listen to it. Okay, I said slowly. We're coming up to a tunnel soon, he said. Any time before we reach it, you can get out, walk in any direction you like, and you won't be in the game no more. Once we go through, you gotta retrace the route we took to get yourself back out that tunnel. That's when you're home, and you gotta convince someone to take you back in a car, 'cause I ain't ferrying you back 20 minutes in. You got till the tunnel to skip out on this, understand? I understand, I said, though I have to say I'm getting a little nervous. Ain't nothing wrong with a little nervous, he replied. By turn 23, I felt we'd traversed half the city. Passers-by gave Rob's Wrangler admiring looks. Other Jeep drivers honked in solidarity. Everything still looked painfully normal, and part of me started to worry there wouldn't be anything here worth telling. Reporter takes drive with interesting man wasn't exactly the hook I'd been hoping for. Turn 33 brought us onto a short, quiet street lined with small businesses, a liquor store, a second-hand clothing shop, a tool shop, and, at the far end, a little place selling antique mirrors. 10 or so people shuffled along the pavement, chatting, laughing, planning their weekends. Only one person stood alone. At first, I only caught her as a shape at the end of the street, reflected in a dozen old mirrors in the shop window. A young woman in a grey coat, sullen and wide-eyed, shifting restlessly, fingers worrying at her buttons. I looked down to jot a note. When I looked up again, she was right next to my window, smiling. The smile looked wrong, too wide, too unwavering, like a mask someone had forcibly pinned to her face. "Lambs at the gate," she said, hoping for something better than clover when all they find are things worse than slaughter. My heart gave a painful little kick. "Rob, what's happening?" I asked. "Ignore her," he said quietly. "He wanted to leave me, so I cut him out," she continued, staring at me. "The lake was hungry. It drank the wound clean." "Miss, are you all right?" I asked before I could stop myself. The smile fell away in an instant, her face twisted into pure fury. "What do you think you're doing?" she screamed. "Have you gone mad?" I flinched back into my seat as her fists hammered against the glass, wild eyes inches from my face. "Would you dance down the lion's tongue?" she shrieked. "It will shred you, you whore! It will shred you down to your sins, you fucking bastard!" Rob slammed his foot down on the accelerator and the Wrangler surged forward. I twisted in my seat to watch her as we pulled away. She staggered after us, retching, sobbing, turning her rage on the cars behind us. She threw herself in front of the convoy, howling at each driver in turn, then crumpled as the last car passed her by. In the mirror, I saw her turn back toward the antique shop. The owner was polishing a large mirror on the outside wall. The woman marched up to it and, with a convulsive scream, smashed her forehead into the glass. The surface spiderwebbed around her skull. The shop owner jumped back, eyes fixed on the mirror, and as she pulled away, I saw red dripping from the fractures. Then we turned the corner and she was gone. "Rob, what was that?" I asked, breathless. "She's there sometimes," he said. "On that street?" I asked, "on the 34th turn." "Who is she?" "I don't know," he said. "She's never acted out that much before, though. Must be a special trip." His lack of concern unsettled me more than the woman herself. The idea that he could fold a scene like that neatly into his personal mythology of the game made my skin crawl. I started cataloguing the possibilities. She might simply have been severely mentally ill. Maybe Rob was so invested in the left-right game that he interpreted every strange but explainable event as supernatural confirmation. Or she could have been an actor hired to rattle me and bolster his story. It seemed elaborate, but not impossible. People had lied to the show before. There was a third explanation, though, one I really didn't like. Because as bizarre as the grey woman's behaviour had been, something else nagged at me. No one else on the street had reacted. No startled glances. No people crossing the road to avoid her. No one even turning their head. The mirror seller had flinched when the glass broke, yes, but even then, I felt his attention was more on the mirror than on the woman smashing her skull into it. The radio crackled suddenly. "Lilith to Bristol," Lilith said. "Eve got that on camera. Do you have audio?" "I think it picked her up," I said. "My God, that was so weird," she replied. "Can you send us the file when we stop? Can you ask ferrymen when we're stopping?" "When's our stopping point?" I asked Rob. "For them, in about 30 minutes, he said. "For you, well, you tell me." He turned off a busy road just before a major junction onto a much quieter 2-lane street. Ahead of us, the asphalt sloped down into an underpass that vanished into shadow. We had reached the tunnel. "What is this supposed to pass under?" I asked. "Ain't supposed to pass under anything," he said. "It's just there." "And if we weren't playing the game?" I asked. "Then it won't show," he said. "The question is, are you playing the game or not?" He finally looked over at me, really looked, then eased his foot onto the brake. The Wrangler rolled to a stop at the mouth of the tunnel. "You get out now. You can go wherever you want to go," he said. "But through there you'll need a car to get yourself home, and like I said, mine ain't turning round for a long while. You understand?" The words were theatrical, but his tone wasn't. It felt less like the setup to a campfire story and more like a genuine question of consent. Was I ready for whatever lay ahead? Did I accept the risks, whatever they were? Was I willing to see this through to the end, whether the game turned out to be real or not? "What are you waiting for?" I asked finally. He smiled, turned his eyes back to the darkness ahead, and picked up the radio. "This is Ferryman to all cars," he said. "Anyone want to step out, then pull to the side now. Otherwise, stay in formation and have some supplies at hand. We got a long ways to go." As we rolled forward and the tunnel swallowed us, I realised something else. Much like the left-right game itself, my opinion of Robert J. Guthard changed direction every few minutes. I'd heard his whole life story, but wasn't sure I knew him. I liked him, but I didn't know if I trusted him. I admired his dedication, but I wasn't certain I'd like where it led. Still, as the sodium lights blinked past and his face flashed in and out of view, I could see that he fully expected this trip to become a major chapter in his story. And this time, for better or for worse, I was along for the ride. The next turn came immediately after the tunnel. We'd been in the dimly lit passage for almost 2 minutes, but at the pace Rob liked to travel, it was hard to figure out how far we'd actually gone. When we descended into the underpass, we were just nearing the outskirts of Phoenix. Scrutinising the rear-view mirror as we left, it was fair to say we weren't that much further out. Everything else, the temperature, the time of day, the weather, all seemed exactly like it had been before we ventured into the tunnel. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, of course, but it certainly didn't feel like we were anywhere new. The tunnel itself had been similarly underwhelming, especially considering the importance Rob seemed to place on it. In fact, the only thing of true interest since we passed through was something Rob said once we hit the halfway mark. As the tunnel's mouth loomed towards us, Rob picked up the CB radio transceiver and issued a casual warning to the convoy. The message itself was straightforward. His choice of words, however, was curious. I decided to ask him about it. "Rob, just a second ago, when you told us the next turn was coming up, why did you use the word trap?" He grunted. "I have it in my notes," I said. "You said, 'Folks, we're coming to the end soon. First little trap's coming up. Our next turn is sharp left as we leave. Look out for it.' Is there a reason you use the word trap?" "Just one of those things," he said. Fellow who wrote all the original logs, he liked to think the road would try and trick you into making a wrong turn. Small roads off large highways, roads obscured from view, sharp turns like this one. He thought the road was trying to deceive him, I asked. "Yeah, pretty much. I gotta say, I agree with the guy." By this point, we'd taken the offending corner and the next right a little further on. I couldn't help but feel that Rob was reading a great deal into what was, essentially, an abrupt turn in an ordinary road. The level of conspiracy he was able to place behind such a simple thing, going as far as to ascribe some mischievous quality to the asphalt itself. It was hard to take seriously. In fact, I was starting to wonder less about whether Rob could convince me this game was real, and more about whether I'd ever be able to convince him that it wasn't. Perhaps this story would be less about where a magic roadway went after a few zigzagging turns, and more about where the human mind could go if it invested too heavily in an idea. To his credit, Rob had noted my cynicism. He even seemed to welcome it, but if our current surroundings were supposed to convince me, then he was going to find me more cynical than he anticipated. Rob kept his hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road. Any attempt at an interview received a pleasant but curt response. He wasn't being evasive. His attention was just elsewhere. Before I knew it, half an hour had gone by without Rob speaking a word. It seemed like a large part of the left-right game involved driving in complete silence. Once again, I wasn't sure what I'd expected. but it certainly hadn't been an earth-shattering start. At least it gave me time to type up my notes. "Ferryman to all cars," Rob said at last. "We stop here." An uneventful hour and a half had passed since we left the tunnel. I hadn't noticed Rob pick up the receiver, but before I knew it, the Wrangler had pulled up at the side of the road, leaving a large space behind us for the rest of the convoy to park up. The buildings were getting few and far between now. It wouldn't be long until we were in the desert proper. With this in mind, I assumed Rob was simply stopping to let everyone drink up. I probably shouldn't have assumed anything when it came to Rob Guthard. Though this was definitely a rest stop, Rob also had some important words for the crew. He gathered us round in a rough semicircle, talking while we ate our provisions. "Now," he said, "I mentioned in the emails that at certain points on this trip, you'd need to do some things just because I say so. This is one of those times. You'll understand." Yeah, I guess," Eve said. "We get to know what it is, right? This is when he tells us to give him our money, right, Rob?" Apollo laughed. "Yeah, I'd rather know what's going on," Ace added. "And I don't intend on keeping anything from you," Rob said. "I just want to be clear that across this next stretch, you need to follow my orders to the letter." "Yeah, we get it," Ace said. "Just tell us already." Rob took a few moments, perhaps to lend gravity to his point, perhaps to swallow some barbed words intended for the increasingly impatient Ace. When he did speak, his tone was measured and serious. He was clearly adamant that we take his words on board. "For about half an hour, the next 13 turns, we'll be going one by one," he said. "We travel in order of formation. Me and Bristol go first, then I'll radio the next car to follow. When you reach the Jeep, you park up behind me, then we keep going as normal. Now." Rob took a deep breath. When he started up again, his speech was even more pointed than before. "There's a hitchhiker on the road," he said. "A well-dressed man with a case. You pick him up, you take him where he needs to go. You do not, under any circumstances, talk to the man. To be safe, don't look at him. Don't take anything he offers you. Don't open the door for him or wave goodbye when he leaves. You do not acknowledge him in any way. You want my advice, don't say a word till you get to the stopping point." "Why do we have to go one by one?" Lilith asked. "Guy who wrote all the logs says he don't like choosing cars," Rob replied. "I don't know what that means, but I'm lucky I never had to find out." "Why don't we just not pick him up?" Ace asked. "That isn't an option," Rob said. "Well, I mean, yes it is. I don't see why we—" "God damn it," Rob snapped. "You'll pick him up whether you want to or not." The group fell silent. It was the first time Rob had raised his voice. In the ensuing stillness, Ace looked like he'd be more than happy to turn his car around and retrace the route back to Phoenix, leaving Rob in the dust with a few choice words. I could sympathize with him a little. Rob had been treating him as an annoyance, a tag-along who hadn't done the homework. But at the end of the day, Ace was doing nothing to fix things. And Rob was essentially right. Ace hadn't done the homework. "Well, okay," Bonnie said softly. "I suppose we should get back on the road then, if everyone's ready." Deciding he had nothing more to say to us, Rob marched over to the Wrangler. Bonnie, Clyde, Apollo and Eve sat on the floor sharing snacks. Ace lost himself in his phone, and Blue Jay, still maintaining a noticeable distance from the group, returned to her car with a copy of US Weekly. "Bristol, can we talk?" Lilith asked. I turned to see her holding her phone with the screen facing me. "Yeah, sure," I said. "What's up?" "Have you tried to make any calls since we came through the tunnel?" she asked. "No, not yet. Why?" "Could you try?" I pulled out my own phone and dialed the office. The line was busy, which wasn't exactly uncommon. Lilith watched me intently, waiting for a reaction. "I'm not getting through," I said. "They were busy?" she asked. Yeah, why?" "Everyone is," she said. "We have signal, we can make calls, but everyone on the other end is busy." "Don't you think it could just be coincidence?" I asked. "I really mean everyone, Bristol," she insisted. While Eve's been driving, I've been calling my camera's automated support line, 911. You dialed 911? For science? Yeah, she said. All of them are busy. I even called this guy at my dorm who has a serious thing for me, and trust me, he is not fucking busy. This is weird, right? It's like we've crossed a threshold and the world's suddenly doing something else, you know? In all honesty, I wasn't sure I did know. I didn't want to say it, but it still seemed like a massive stretch. Luckily, Rob saved me from commenting when he called me over to the car, clearly eager to get back on the road. I told Lilith we'd look into her discovery on the other side, and she nodded in agreement, retreating to her friend and immediately stealing a handful of apple slices. I climbed into the Wrangler and waved goodbye to the convoy. We slowly rolled back onto the road and set off again. Watching the rest of the group disappear into the background, I felt noticeably more isolated despite Rob's presence. Or perhaps because of it, I wasn't exactly sure. The hitchhiker showed up about 10 turns later. Just like Rob said, the man was incredibly well dressed, in a well-fitting brown suit with a dark green tie. Even from a distance, I could see his shoes were expertly shined, as was the varnished wooden case resting on the floor beside them. He stood on the side of the road and raised his hand gingerly, wearing a look of hopeful anticipation. "Who is he?" I asked. "The hitchhiker," Rob said. "Is that really all you're going to say?" "It's all I can say. You understand the rules here?" "Don't talk to him," I repeated. "I'd say don't talk at all," Rob said. "Not until we stop. When we stop, we're safe." Rob veered slowly over to the side of the road. The hitchhiker smiled appreciatively, clasping his hands together and shaking them in thanks. Picking up his case, he strolled over to the Wrangler while unbuttoning his blazer. "See you on the other side," I muttered. The back door opened and the hitchhiker pulled himself into the storage area. Finding no seating, he settled himself cheerfully on some of the softer luggage just behind me. "Not much in the way of seating back here, huh?" he said. I have to admit, I felt a subtle urge to respond. Even after the stern warnings I'd received, ignoring the man felt almost instinctively rude. I was raised British, after all. "So, where are you all from?" he asked. "I'm travelling in from Oakwell." I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. He met my gaze and smiled. I flicked my attention back to the road, counting the white lines. The stranger persisted in trying to start a conversation. 10 minutes went by. The silence grew palpable, broken intermittently by yet another cheerful attempt at small talk. Topics included what nice weather we were having, our professions, our hobbies. In response, I busied myself with pointless but occupying tasks. I played games in my head, taking common phrases and turning them into clunky anagrams. It seemed to work, and after a short while I started to habituate to the man's chatter. I almost didn't notice he was there. Maybe that was what allowed him to catch me out. "You're just a fucking disappointment, aren't you?" he said. The statement came out of the blue, sharp, venomous, completely divorced from the idle questioning I'd been tuning out. I was daydreaming when I heard it, and before I could register what I was doing, I was turning to face him. My lips were already parting as I went. A reflexive thought, reflexively vocalized. "What?" I almost said it out loud. The word was on the edge of my tongue. A single note, my vocal cords were all but ready to play. Only the sudden, vice-like grip of Rob's hand on my forearm anchored me in the moment. I stared at the hitchhiker, my mouth still open. He looked different now. All of the warmth, all of the pleasantry, had drained from his face like running makeup. His smile was malevolent, calculating, and finally it felt honest. "You want to know things?" he asked softly. "I can tell you." Rob kept his eyes focused on the road, but his grip on my arm tightened. "I can tell you everything you want to know," the hitchhiker went on. "Even the things you never knew about yourself. Even the thoughts you didn't know you were thinking. Those little critters, all the way at the back." We stared at each other a moment longer before I turned back to the road. I didn't count the white lines anymore. Now I was focused intently on anything our passenger had to say. For the next 10 minutes, ignoring him was going to have my full attention. He only tried a few more times, reverting back to more innocent questions. Nothing took. 5 minutes later, he indicated to a seemingly random point at the side of the road, and Rob dropped him off. The man thanked us, climbed neatly out, put down his case and waved as we departed. When we disappeared around the next corner, he still hadn't stopped. Surprisingly, the silence caused by the hitchhiker's presence wasn't nearly as intense as the one left in his wake. I decided to break the tension, somewhat ungracefully. "To be fair," I said, "we are having nice weather." "Don't talk," Rob replied. Are you mad at me?" I asked. "I'm sorry he got to me. I wasn't expecting—" "You did fine," Rob said. "We don't talk till we stop." I went back to my notes, making a point to write down my current feelings. For the record, embarrassed but relieved. Once I put the words down on paper, however, I felt something else, confusion mixed with concern. Because at the end of the day, what exactly was I relieved about? That I hadn't talked to a strange man who had tried to talk to me? Was anything really at stake? The more I thought about it, the more I realised that the entire episode with this mysterious hitchhiker reduced the left-right game to two possible states. It was either real or it was an elaborate hoax perpetrated by Rob J. Guthard. The crazy woman, the tunnel, the malicious left turn, all of those could be explained as rationalizations, but the hitchhiker was far too elaborate, far too difficult to predict. If he was an actor, then Rob was nothing more than an impressive fraud. If he was genuine, then I wasn't entirely sure where that left us. Something in the corner of my eye pulled me from my thoughts. A transient peripheral object that almost completely passed me by before I turned in a weak attempt to catch it. I only got a few seconds to look before it was gone from my field of view. I faced forward once more, sat back in my chair, and let Rob carry us ever further down the road. It wasn't too long before we finally pulled over. "You did good," Rob said quietly. "I'm sorry for grabbing you. I just didn't want you to do something you'd regret." "No, it's fine," I said. "I was going to. Do you know what happens if you talk to him?" "Not sure," Rob admitted. "Came close myself once, a few years back. The way he looks at you when he thinks he's got you. I don't think I want to know." "Rob, I saw something a few minutes ago," I said. "I don't know if you've noticed it." "Afraid I had my eyes forward most of the time," he replied. "There was a car on the side of the road," I told him. "It had crashed off the bank. Have you seen that before?" "I ain't never seen that," he said, "but random stuff sometimes shows up here and there." "Have people other than you run the left-right game?" I asked. "No one I know of," he said. "Whoever it was, they'd probably just rather crash than face that damn hitchhiker again." "He's there on the way back too?" I asked. "If you're unlucky," Rob said. "Well," I muttered, "something to look forward to." Rob picked up the CB radio and messaged for Apollo to set off, repeating his warnings concerning the hitchhiker. I felt like everyone was going to get a similar speech before they embarked. Ace would probably get it twice. Half an hour later, Apollo showed up. Though he laughed about the ordeal, he was clearly a little shaken. "Guy should call himself an Uber," he said. "You can't shut those guys up. Do you guys have Uber in England?" "Yeah," I said. "Then you know what I mean, right?" Bonnie and Clyde arrived more quickly than Apollo. They pulled up at the back. Clyde helped Bonnie out of the car and they proceeded to stretch their legs. Once Apollo joined them, it became clear that everyone had a different story to tell. The hitchhiker had offered Clyde travel suites, pleasantly but firmly insisting he take one. Apollo had almost started talking about his music tastes after the hitchhiker asked to play something on the radio. That particular story did leave me curious about whether we still got NPR on this road. Rob customarily greeted Bonnie and Clyde, then walked off to signal Eve and Lilith. He was still sitting in the Jeep when I met him at the door. "Hey, what are you up to?" I asked. "Just waiting by the phone," he said. "The girls are on their way. You need anything?" Maybe," I said. I think Apollo's been affected by the whole hitchhiker thing a bit more than he's letting on." "He seems just fine to me," Rob said. "I'm not so sure," I replied. "He's only smiling when people are nearby. Could you talk to him?" "Well, I ain't much comfort," Rob said. "I got 4 ex-wives to tell me that. Think it might be better coming from you?" "I think this is a man-to-man conversation," I said. "I might just get a brave face." Rob didn't look comfortable, but he acquiesced, climbing out of the car. "Last man-to-man conversation I had," he muttered. "My son didn't talk to me for 3 months." I watched him wander over to Apollo, who was standing by his Range Rover, staring into his phone. Rob put a calming hand on the man's shoulder. From a distance, it was actually a sweet moment. I started to feel bad for lying to him. I carefully opened the driver's side door and climbed into the Wrangler, assuming I had around 20 seconds before Rob came back. Picking up the CB radio receiver, I stared at a list of presets labelled 1 through 9. I didn't know which button I needed to press to talk to Eve and Lilith, and I certainly didn't have time to call everyone up. Rob had handed us all a transceiver before we left. It was what he'd been using for the all-car bulletins. Preset 1 connected to a transceiver in each car. I'd seen that in practice enough times. The rest of the presets must access the transceivers individually, and if Rob was the man I thought he was, he'd given our radios out in order of position. If that was the case, then either Rob or I could be preset 2. Apollo would be next, then Bonnie and Clyde. Without knowing where Rob had placed himself in the queue, the only option that would guarantee me getting through to Lilith and Eve would be preset 7. I thought that made sense. With no time to check my work, I pressed the button and snatched up the receiver. "This is Bristol to Lilith and Eve," I said. "Are you guys there?" The receiver crackled quietly. I looked in the wing mirror and saw Rob making awkward small talk with Apollo. Perhaps his 4 ex-wives were onto something. "Lilith to Bristol," she replied. "How is it on the other side? We haven't seen a hitchhiker. Oh, by the way, I just phoned Eve and it went through. Could I have your number to test?" "Sorry, Lilith," I cut in. "I'm phoning about something else." "Why? What's going on over there?" she asked. Apollo was nodding to Rob. I could imagine him making assurances that he was perfectly fine. I really didn't have long at all. "I have a mission for you," I said, "but you have to keep it secret." "Sounds awesome," Lilith said. "What's up?" "Once you're past the hitchhiker, there's a crashed car on the road, on the passenger side," I told her. "Whilst you're going past it, would you mind getting some footage?" "What sort of footage?" she asked. "Just zoom in and get as much detail as possible," I said. "You don't need to stop, just anything will be useful." Rob was starting to walk back to the car. I shifted into the passenger seat, still holding the receiver. "Is there anything specific you..." Lilith began. "Talk to me later, not now," I said quickly. "Thank you, bye." I slammed the receiver into its holster a moment before Rob opened the door. He shrugged at me. "He seems fine," Rob said, "unless there's something he ain't telling me." The rest of the day was uneventful. Lilith and Eve pulled in, beaming about their experience with the hitchhiker and bragging about what the dashcam footage would mean for their channel. Lilith ended her story by insisting that nothing else happened for the rest of her journey, while directing a highly intentional look in my direction. I looked away and made a mental note to catch up with her when fewer people were around. Blue Jay seemed the least fazed by her run-in with the hitchhiker. We did manage to get a few words out of her, though perhaps a few is an exaggeration. "I'm tired," she said. After that, she went to sit down on her own. When Ace pulled up to the side of the road, he almost fell out of his car. His legs were weak, his face gaunt, his breaths quick and shallow. I tried to get him to talk about it on tape, but he shrugged me off, eager to hear about where we were going rather than talk about where we'd been. We travelled for a while longer, now at around 486 turns, and nearing our first night on the road. Rob signalled our stopping point, a quiet clearing at the top of a hill. He cleared a sleeping area in the back of the veranda, leaving a line of luggage as a barrier between us. I appreciated the thought but didn't really know how to tell him. In the end, I just said, "Thanks for making room." Apollo tried to keep everyone from going to bed, issuing vague statements about making a fire, but people quickly shuffled off to their cars. The early start and the subsequent events of the day had taken their toll. I watched Lilith and Eve break away from the group and head to bed. I supposed I'd have to talk to them tomorrow morning when Rob wasn't around. I still felt a bit bad for lying to him and for pulling Lilith and Eve into what could be a blatant act of dumb paranoia. Rob seemed like a good man, a reasonable man, as flawed as any of us, but fundamentally decent. But the fact remained that when I talked to him about the crashed car, he'd clearly said, "No one I know of." Whoever it was, they'd probably just rather crash than face that damn hitchhiker again. I wanted to trust Rob. I wanted to believe him when he said he didn't see the car, that he'd never seen a car on that stretch of road. But for a man of so few words, he might have said too much. If he truly never saw the car, how did he know the direction it was facing? I made all my notes concerning this subject on paper and in shorthand, which I was hoping, in Rob's long and varied life, he hadn't inexplicably learned to read. Long after Rob had gone to bed, I stayed in the passenger seat typing up my thoughts on the day. That was Sister Moon by Leslie Estrada, another song to calm you folks down as we head into the evening, the radio host said. "It's Chuck Greenwald, and I'm with you till the witching hour." I decided to put the radio on in the end. I was curious, and I also wanted the company. I turned the volume way down so the noise wouldn't reach Rob, and searched around for something to have in the background. There weren't many stations to choose from out here. The clearest one was Radio Jubilation, the local station for a nearby town. The current DJ, Chuck Greenwald, had been playing soulful folk music for an hour. "It's been a busy week in Jubilation," Chuck said, as we welcome in our new school principal, a very impressive guy who's bringing some new and interesting proposals to our community. It's got a few people talking about funding for the arts. If you've got a view, we'd love to hear it. I finished typing up my less clandestine notes and just then realised how tired I was. Wanting to sleep, but not yet prepared to move the single yard between me and the air mattress, I lay back in my seat, listening to Mr. Greenwald address his beloved town. "Well, we're going to go back to your requests very soon," he said, "and I can tell you we've got some goodies on the way. For now, though, let's take ourselves to the new box." There was a brief pause, and then he added, in the same easy tone, "They're going to hurt now." Immediately, at the volume of a whisper, Radio Jubilation began to broadcast a cacophony of bone-rending screams. The noise shredded the air, what sounded like hundreds of people, each contributing their own voice to a collective symphony of pain and torment. I instinctively moved my body away from the radio, suddenly upright and wide awake. The cries were ceaseless, agonizing, punctuated only by half-stifled, tear-choked pleas for whatever was happening to stop. A moment later it did, or, at the very least, the screaming cut out as the soft tones of Chuck Greenwald took over again. "Hope you folks enjoyed that," he said calmly. "We're going to be bringing you much, much more. This is Chuck Greenwald, telling you you're always welcome in Jubilation. Stay with us." I looked from the radio over to the sleeping figure of Rob J. Guthard. I couldn't help but stare at him as a single thought ran through my head. I hope this man's a fraud. I hope he's playing me, because if he isn't, then there's something very wrong with this road. Rice, non-perishable. Soy sauce, non-perishable. Salt, non-perishable. Eggs, well, they're perishable, but I bought them fresh and I got hard-boiled that'll last a week. It was breakfast time, the start of our first full day on the road. Rob had been up since 7 o'clock, cooking a meal for anyone who wanted it. The aroma pulled us out of our makeshift beds and arranged us around his portable stove. Our bowls were already full before we realised there was a catch. The trade-off for this supposedly free food? A 10-minute lecture from Rob about the power of rice. See, in the Pacific, our guys used to be terrified of the Japanese, he said. Whole armies marching on grains, thought they were super soldiers. See, the Japs know the secret. You give people rice in the morning and they're going for the whole day. After dropping 2 large spoonfuls of his favourite staple into a bowl and handing it to me, Rob cracked a raw egg over the top. The yolk clouded over as I stirred it in. To be fair, the food was delicious, and it was fun to watch Rob on his soapbox. At least there were some things he was willing to talk at length about. I stared across the circle at Lilith and Eve. Eve had spilled rice onto her top, and Lilith was teasing her playfully. Eve saw me looking over, met my gaze, then turned back to Lilith, her tone suddenly dramatically muted. I returned to my food, making a point of seeming attentive to Rob's speech. A minute later, the 2 girls decided they'd finished their meal, and I quickly realised so had I. Devouring the last few bites, I placed my bowl in the small tub of hot water next to the stove and casually wandered over to their car. Lilith and Eve were facing away from me, silently packing up their sleeping bags. They refused to look at me once I reached them, in a deeply conspicuous attempt at subtlety. "Is he watching?" Lilith murmured. I glanced over at Rob. He was still talking at Bonnie, Clyde and Apollo, asking them to guess what breakfast translates to in Japanese. "I think we're fine," I said. "So, did you see the car?" Without answering, Eve reached into the back seat and picked up a MacBook, the repository for all of Paranormacon's footage. She pressed play as Lilith and I huddled around her, blocking the view of any potential onlookers. The footage showed a familiar road. Lilith and Eve must have dropped off the hitchhiker and just made the next corner. I could hear them talking about the experience, both terrified and thrilled by the events of the day. Eve reminded Lilith that they needed to look out for the car. Lilith swore, and the camera immediately started scouring the roadside. "Look, there it is," Eve's voice said over the speakers. "I see it. Slow down, slow down." Lilith's voice followed. The abandoned car came into view, with Eve slowing to a crawl and Lilith maxing out her camera's zoom. A precious few details could be gleaned. The windscreen and driver's side window were broken. The keys were still in the ignition, and once Eve overtook the wreck, it was just possible to make out a dark stain soaked into the driver's seat. "Stop the car," Video Lilith said. Just as the Eve on screen started to slow, the real Lilith snapped the laptop shut. I glanced between them, trying to keep my voice as low as possible. "You stopped the car?" I asked. "I mean, yeah," Eve said. Lilith winced. "We know you told us not to, but it was like really weird, so I went over and..." "You got out of the car!" I hissed. "For the record, I was super against it," Eve said quickly. "Anyway," Lilith went on, "there wasn't much in there that we didn't get from the road, except there was a bag on the back seat." "Did you get a look inside?" I asked. "Yeah. Do you wanna?" Lilith tilted her head towards the back of their car. It took me a second to realise what she was getting at. "It's in the boot," I whispered. "It's in the what?" Eve asked. "It's in the trunk," I corrected myself. "Yeah, obviously," Lilith said. "We couldn't just leave it there. Look, you can watch the rest of the footage any time. We'll even send it to you, but you need to look in this bag before we hit the road." I checked on Rob once more. He was washing up the bowls and cutlery, exchanging small talk with Bonnie, oblivious to what was transpiring a mere 5 meters away. Lilith and Eve escorted me to the trunk, reforming our secretive huddle before Eve lifted it open. A brown leather duffel bag sat front and centre. It looked expensive but worn, probably a few decades old. The pair gestured for me to unzip it. Just to preface this, Lilith said, I want to say, this whole trip has been fucking weird. The bag wasn't exactly full. I rummaged through the loose contents, finding a few sets of good quality men's shirts and a pair of jeans. Further down, I found a small and well-used shaving kit. I was starting to wonder what Lilith and Eve were so bent out of shape over when my hand hit the hard edge of a straight, rectangular object. Slowly and with great care, I managed to extricate it from layers of wool and denim. It was a package, a heavy square block about the length of my forearm, neatly wrapped in brown paper. It seemed completely unassuming except for a black wire hanging from the underside, leading back into the bag itself. Lifting the wire, a black plug rose out and swung slightly in mid-air. "Turn it around," Eve said. With both girls watching me intently, I turned the package in my hands. The wire connected to the charging port of an old Nokia 3210, which in turn was superglued to the package along with a few shards of exposed circuit board. Last, but certainly not least, were the words emblazoned on the brown paper in imposing black typeface. C4 explosive. My mouth felt dry. I wasn't expecting that, I managed. "I know, fuck this road, right?" Lilith said. "There was tons more in his trunk too. It was insane." "Is this dangerous?" I asked. "Not right now," Eve said. "It's basically inert unless you have the detonator." "You're sure?" I asked. "We have Wikipedia downloaded on a hard drive," Lilith said. "It's the only reason Eve let me bring it here. She read the article like 3 times. Anyway, the Nokia's out of battery." "Okay, well, I'm not even going to ask how you know that," I said. "I don't get this. Why would someone bring plastic explosive for the left-right game? I mean, what the hell are we heading into?" "I have no idea," Eve said. "Do you know if Rob has any?" "If I have any what?" Rob asked. When I looked up, Rob was only a few steps away from us. I hid the C4 behind my back, dropping it into my satchel next to my notebook. I just managed to pull my fingers out of the way as Eve instinctively slammed the trunk shut. "Tips for sleeping in cars," I said quickly. "These guys had a rough night." "Well, I'm sorry to hear that," Rob said slowly. "Just something you gotta get used to, I guess. We're hitting the road in 15-20 minutes. That all right with you guys?" "Yeah, totally," Eve said. "Bristol, you mind helping me pack up?" Rob asked. "Not at all," I said. Painfully aware of what was hanging at my side, I stepped away with Rob towards the now dismantled stove. Looking over my shoulder, I saw Lilith and Eve watching us go, their faces awash with apprehension. I couldn't say I felt the same. Despite my surroundings and the multitude of unsettling events, I didn't have space in my head for apprehension just then. All anxiety was slowly being pushed out, its territory annexed by a bolstering sense of resolve. There were far too many strange things happening on this road, and even if it killed me, I was going to find out what they all meant. "Rob, can I talk to you?" Ace called. We'd packed everything into the back of the Wrangler and were just about to get back on the road when Ace came up behind us. Rob turned around and I sensed an icy shield rising up as he curtly addressed our last arrival. "What is it, Ace?" Rob asked. Can I ask you something?" Ace said. It's okay if you need me to go home after." The shield thawed immediately. This wasn't the Ace we'd seen before, and Rob was perceptive enough to notice. He engaged, cautiously but sincerely. "What do you want to ask?" Rob said. Ace shuffled uncomfortably, suddenly seeming much younger. "Does the hitchhiker—" He couldn't finish the question. "Does anything happen if you don't pick him up?" "Oh, god damn it, Ace," Rob muttered. "I told you, you can't—" He cut himself off. "Tell me what happened." I was making my way down the road," Ace said, trembling, "and I was angry at how you'd been. And when I saw the hitchhiker, I thought I should, do what I said and just drive by." He couldn't meet Rob's eye. A minute later, I look in the rear-view mirror and he's sitting in the back of my car, Ace whispered. He's just talking about the weather. I mean, I swear I didn't pick him up, but when I think about it, all these memories come back. I start to remember pulling over, letting him in. It's like I did it, but I didn't even... Did you talk to him? Rob asked. No, I promise I didn't say a word. Rob stared at him in silence. Ace hung his head like a penitent criminal facing judgment. Feels awful, doesn't it? Rob finally said. Ace lifted his head, confused, searching Rob's expression for clues. I did the same as you the first time, Rob admitted. Just drove right by. Wasn't going to let some stranger in my car. Nearly jumped out of my skin when I saw him in the rear view. Rob grinned. Ace managed a shaky smile back. You ain't got the right gear for this, Ace, Rob said. I like to run a tight ship, and I gotta say it pissed me off. If you want to turn that Porsche of yours around, no one will think any less of you. But if you want to keep on this road, how about you try to listen more and I'll try to be less of a hard ass? Rob held out his hand. It was an offer of peace, or at least an offer of terms. Ace accepted it, grimacing only slightly as he faced Rob's iron grip. About time we hit the road, Rob said. 5 minutes later, we were rolling into a deep valley, each member of the convoy appearing over the crest of the hill behind us. Everyone was present and accounted for, even Ace. I have to say I'm impressed, I told Rob. With what? He asked. With how you handled Ace. One might presume a guy who's been divorced 4 times isn't the best at conflict resolution. Divorce is conflict resolution, he replied. That's a good point, I hesitated. He seemed to be saying the hitchhiker made him pull over. Is that really what happens? Yep, he always ends up in the back seat, and you always remember picking him up. It's just, that's not scientifically possible. Get used to that. We spent the next 2 hours in silence, me typing up my notes while Rob navigated the sparse few turns that showed up every now and then. Ace's testimony troubled me, perhaps because it stretched my favourite theory, that the game was an elaborate hoax perpetrated by Rob Guthard. I'd been content believing the hitchhiker could have been an incredibly deft performer, but even if the man was a RADA-trained thespian, that didn't make him capable of mind control. Ace could be insane, or maybe an actor himself, but those ideas sounded exactly like the idle rationalizations I'd criticised Rob for earlier. I wasn't sure what my theory was anymore. I kept working, hoping I could type my way toward revelation. A few lone trees had begun to appear in the distance, towering wild pines with trunks as thick as barrels. Without my noticing, the trees grew more numerous, and in that creeping way, landscapes change. It wasn't long before they spanned both sides of the road, encapsulating us in a deep, bright forest. Realising I'd recorded everything of substance, and with Rob concentrating on the drive, I had no choice but to lay back in my seat and watch the world roll by. Despite the pervasive strangeness of the left-right game, there was beauty on the road. Under the light shade of the canopy, the smell of pine needles permeating the still air, I actually felt myself starting to relax. It only took 3 words to change that. The words didn't come from Rob. He was as quiet as always. They weren't spoken by anyone in the convoy either. The words were written in calligraphic gold paint resting on a spotless white sign. Even from a distance, with the letters little more than a blur, I knew what they were going to say. They were the words I'd been dreading since I'd switched off the radio, the words I'd spent a long, troubled night hoping I'd never see. Welcome to jubilation. It turned out there was room in my head for apprehension. Rob lifted the CB radio. This is ferryman to all cars. We're going to be heading through a small town. No rules here. Just keep driving and we'll be fine. He put the radio back into the receiver. I tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. What does the name Chuck Greenwald mean to you? I asked. About as much as John Doe, Rob said. Why? He's the radio DJ here. In jubilation, how do you know something like that? I was listening to his show last night. What do you know about this place? Seems like a good town, he said. Folk don't pay attention to you. I just head straight through. You've never seen anything untoward? Some weird stuff now and again. I like to keep my eyes on the road. The forest cleared abruptly like a parting curtain, revealing a picture-perfect American town, archetypal almost to the point of self-parody. We'd arrived in jubilation. There was no denying the town was beautiful. We were welcomed by a row of vibrantly coloured shops spanning the length of a long, wide street. At the far end, an ornate, grey-walled town hall surveyed its domain. The place was immaculate. I failed to find a solitary piece of litter on the sidewalk, a single smudge on a plate glass window. Every inch of jubilation was pristine, tranquil, and noticeably deserted. Where is everyone? I asked. I don't know, Rob said. There's usually some around. Maybe there's a game on. We took the next right, then another left. The story was the same at every turn. A beautiful, leafy suburban town, entirely bereft of its human population. The cafes were empty, the public pool a perfectly still mirror. We even passed the school, finger-painted faces smiling at us from the kindergarten windows. But the building itself was locked up, which was strange, considering it was noon on a Wednesday. Eventually the Wrangler turned onto the first residential street we'd encountered. The sign at the corner read, Sycamore Row. The quaint shops gave way to luxurious houses, identical white walls, wide porches, and fresh green lawns cut to the exact same length. The road stretched in a straight line for about a mile, creating an eerie corridor of copy and paste buildings. But the strangest part revealed itself a moment later, voiced simply by Rob. Well, I guess we know where everybody is now. In front of every house, a dining table stood on the lawn, occupied, without fail, by a family of 4. One husband, one wife, one son, one daughter. They were sharing a meal together. A family on the left clinked their glasses of orange juice as they dined on pork chops and salad. The family on the right carved into a hunk of meatloaf, smiling warmly at each other. Staring down the long street, I estimated upwards of 800 people, arranged in neat subsets of 4, all dining at the same time. None of them seemed to notice us. Rob lifted the CB again. Ferryman to all cars. Looks like we've come during a town celebration. Let's not bother these good people as we pass on through. He let the Wrangler roll slowly down the street, keeping his foot light on the gas, trying to make as little noise as possible. The more families we passed, the clearer it became that every single one of them shared common characteristics. All of them were impeccably dressed. All of them, every single family, consisted of the same subset: husband, wife, son, daughter. And although their meals varied slightly, every family shared the same raucous, almost oppressive happiness. Small-town America, am I right, guys? Apollo joked through the radio. His jokes didn't help. If anything, they made things worse. I felt claustrophobic, trapped. Some screaming animal deep within me knew it was surrounded on all sides by something it didn't understand. Maybe I was imagining it, but as we continued down the road, everyone outside seemed to be laughing a bit harder, celebrating a bit more. We'd successfully crept more than halfway down the street. A sharp left turn waited for us at the end, the road out of jubilation. Another street came up on the right, Asa Road. As we passed it, I glanced down the avenue, curious if every street was like ours. I didn't like what I saw. The houses were just as pristine and prestigious, white walls, manicured lawns. But like a spot-the-difference puzzle, the subtle changes were the ones that mattered. There were no tables, no families. Most of the windows were broken. Cars lay abandoned in the road, one smashed into a splintered porch. Above every door, an X had been painted in red. Outside each house, small mounds of clothing sat on the perfect grass. and at the end of the street, a huge collective pile of men's, women's, and children's shoes towered, seemingly ownerless. "Great going, everybody," Rob said quietly. "Let's get back out there." We finally reached the end of the street. I breathed a heavy sigh of relief as we turned the corner and bid farewell to Jubilation. I shot one last glance in the wing mirror. Vindictive, triumphant. I immediately regretted it. In the split second before the town disappeared from view, I saw the 800-plus residents of Sycamore Row. They weren't smiling anymore, and they were all looking at us. I welcomed the forest the moment the trees rose around us again. The indifference of nature was a gift after the saccharine, faux civility of Jubilation. "Towns like that make me glad I'm a city boy," Apollo said. "I thought it was nice," Bonnie replied. "Wasn't it like Wintry Bay?" "I don't think I've been," Clyde said. "Oh, maybe it was Shelburne Falls," Bonnie offered. "Oh, it was a little like Shelburne Falls," Clyde agreed. "Guys, we got to keep this channel clear," Rob cut in. We hurried down the next road and turned right. The farther we got from Jubilation, the lighter the mood seemed to grow. "How long until we stop?" I asked. "About another 4 hours," Rob said. "Nothing big in between us and there, though. Shouldn't be a problem." "Good to hear. So, what does breakfast translate to in Japanese?" "You heard that?" "Yeah, I've been curious all day. Does it have something to do with I lurched forward violently, a bolt of pain snapping through my neck as my head slammed back against the seat. Rob had stamped the brake, bringing us to a jarring halt. Before I could ask why, the answer arrived in the form of a falling pine tree, one of the massive ones, slamming across the road just meters ahead of us. "God damn it!" Rob barked. "You all right?" "I'm fine," I said, massaging my neck. I looked at the base of the fallen tree. The cut marks were straight, clean, deliberate. Someone had chopped the tree down, and they'd timed it to crush us. "Rob, what's going on?" "Ferryman to all cars," Rob said into the radio. "It's full reverse. Watch out for the people behind you." The convoy pulled back toward Jubilation. Rob waited for Apollo to begin moving, then reversed himself. A second later, he slammed the brakes again, surveying the road. "Ferryman to all cars," he said. "Road's done for, but there's a gap at the end. Be careful." He was right. The tree covered the asphalt, but the slender treetop lay just over the grassy bank beside the road. A sharp little valley sat between us and the grass. But Rob didn't hesitate. He twisted the wheel, dry steered toward the gap, and guided us over the edge. The Wrangler dropped down the small bank, bumped onto the grass, and skirted around the fallen trunk. Pine needles brushed my window as we passed. Another bump, and we were back on the road. Rob pulled over and turned to face the convoy. "Okay, Apollo, make your way." "On it, Rob." As Apollo swerved toward the gap, something reached my ears. An engine, quiet at first, almost indistinguishable from our own rumbling. But it was growing louder, steadily, unavoidably. "Rob," I said, "someone's coming." "Apollo, get yourself over here right now," Rob ordered. "All cars, you're on double time. Get moving." Apollo accelerated, dropping into the dip and pulling back up with ease. The noise grew still louder. I could practically picture the vehicle rocketing toward the corner, just one turn away from getting a clear line of sight straight at us. And whatever it was, I didn't want to share a road with anything coming from Jubilation. Bonnie and Clyde went next, struggling more than Rob or Apollo had, but making it across. Then the vehicle turned the corner. A white truck skidded into view, tires screaming across the asphalt. A towering metal beam rose behind the cab, a thick hook swinging wildly with momentum. A tow truck, but nothing about it suggested help. "Jubilation Recovery," the hood read, faded but legible. Rob's jaw clenched. "All cars, once you're on the other side, drive," he said. "Wait around the left turn. I'll radio if they get by me." "What about you guys?" Apollo asked. "I'll come once everyone's across," Rob said. Now ain't the time for questions. Eve and Lilith, get over here now. We still had time, but seconds were slipping away like water through fingers. Eve and Lilith swung down the bank, crossed and climbed back onto the asphalt in mere seconds. The tow truck was gaining, fast. Blue Jay, on the other hand, took her time. Too much time. Almost casual as she eased down the road's edge. My teeth clenched. If she wanted to be calm, good for her, but Ace was alone on the other side now, drumming his fingers furiously against the steering wheel. She rejoined the convoy at the next turn, showing none of the urgency the moment demanded. "Take it easy, Ace," Rob muttered into the radio. "You ain't built for this." Ace edged toward the gap, but he did it too directly. His front wheel thudded over the bank, and the Porsche's chassis scraped loudly against the edge, too low slung for the drop. "Rob, what do I do? Rob!" Ace shouted. The tow truck didn't slow. It aligned itself perfectly with his Porsche, barreling ahead with impossible speed, reckless, determined, inevitable. "Get out of the car, Ace!" Rob yelled. "Get out of the goddamn car!" Ace fumbled with his seatbelt, panic crushing his dexterity. He freed it, threw it aside, reached for the door, and the door slammed against a pine trunk, jammed in place. For a moment, too long, too sharp, he looked straight at me. Pure pleading terror. Then the pickup struck. The tow truck smashed into the Porsche's passenger side. The door flattened. Ace's head slammed into the window. The horrific screech of metal gave way to a sickening silence. "Shit," Rob breathed. He climbed immediately into the back of the Wrangler. "What can I do?" I asked, heart pounding. "Stay here," he said. I heard him rummaging through the luggage. Outside, the tow truck reversed cleanly, impossibly, out of the Porsche's ruins. Its hood wasn't even dented. The two occupants climbed out. White shirts, blue overalls. No urgency, no shock, no concern. They parked the tow truck sideways, the hook hanging just meters from Ace's mangled car. Jubilation Recovery, here to help, gleamed on the side. They strolled over to the Porsche, casual, chatting, completely indifferent to the violence that had just unfolded. They threw open Ace's ruined passenger door. Ace looks stunned, lost, like he's battling a concussion. He's only barely aware as they drag him out of the car, his feet scraping asphalt. But as the mechanics tighten their grips around his arms, something sharp wakes up in him. He begins to struggle, twisting against them while his captors continue talking casually amongst themselves. "Let him go!" Rob shouts behind me. I whip around. Rob has stepped out of the Wrangler, and tucked neatly inside those organised stacks of luggage, hidden in plain sight, is a loaded hunting rifle. Rob raises the stock to his shoulder, eyes locked on the mechanics. "I said let him go!" The mechanics don't react, not to the gun, not to Rob, not to any of it. They keep frog-marching Ace toward the tow truck. One of them mutters a quiet joke to the other. They laugh. Then, bang! An awful, thunderous gunshot explodes beside me. I flinch violently as a deep red hole blossoms in one mechanic's torso. Blood seeps out in a slow, steady bloom. In any sane world, the man would collapse. Instead, he simply looks down at the wound, then up at Rob, then back to the task at hand. He hardly breaks stride as he continues dragging Ace forward, dripping blood across the ground. I hear Rob urgently reloading the rifle behind me. The mechanics arrive at the back of the truck. Two short metal loops hang from the lowest chain link on the tow hook. Without hesitation, the men shove Ace's arms through the loops, one through each, until he's hanging by the armpits beneath the hook, barely able to support his own weight. Rob fires again, the bullet goes wide. The mechanics don't even flinch. One of them grabs a fistful of Ace's hair, chatting idly to the other, and lifts his head until Ace's lower jaw is poised just a few inches above the hook. And in that moment, despite everything, despite my job, despite my principles, despite the whole goddamn reason I came on this journey, I close my eyes. The image disappears, but the sound doesn't. The impact, the horrible, weighted thunk, and the muffled broken groan that follows. They sink into my bones, reverberating through my whole body. Something metallic snaps. Another gunshot cracks the air, followed by the sharp twang of a ricochet. Ace's strangled cries continue as the truck engine revs and carries him, alive, back toward jubilation. Another gunshot. It hits nothing. As the engine fades into the distance and Ace's whimpers dissolve with it, a few moments pass. Then one final gunshot rings out behind me, measured, hopeless. "God damn it," Rob growls. "God fucking damn it." The Wrangler shudders as Rob kicks its side with every ounce of strength he has. When I finally force myself to open my eyes, the road is still again. Just a fallen pine tree, a ruined Porsche, and the long, empty stretch of highway ahead of us. Rob climbs back into the car. He's trying to breathe, slow, controlled, but rage is burning through him, tightening every line in his face. "We have to go," he says quietly. He turns the Jeep around. The road stretches ahead, indifferent and endless. The fallen pine shrinks in the rearview mirror, and with it, the last glimpse of Ace. An emptiness settles into the Wrangler, an absence of conversation, of reason, of anything that might resemble comfort. My ears still ring with the echo of gunfire and the sound of Ace being driven away. There's nothing else to do. Rob and I take the next left.
I hope you enjoyed this story, as well as my first 25 days in hardcore Skyblock. See, I added proper first-person dialogue from Alice Sharma because I really wanted to bring NeonTempo's work back to life. He wrote this story almost 8 years ago, and he did an absolutely phenomenal job. His Reddit profile is linked in the description below. Though all 10 parts of the left-right game are archived now, so you unfortunately can't like or comment on the original posts. I actually messaged him on Reddit about 2 weeks ago asking for permission to narrate his stories. He hasn't responded. His most recent post was 7 months ago, so I'm guessing he's not active anymore. I even commented on his newest story just in case. Either way, I think sharing his work here is a good thing. More people will get to experience his writing, and he really deserves that recognition. I'll be continuing the series, and my friend Lena will narrate parts 4 through 10 in the upcoming hardcore videos. If you did enjoy the episode, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. Your support helps my channel grow more than you know. I'm aiming to release days 26 through 50 next Wednesday, but if not, it will definitely be out the following Wednesday. I'll update you guys by Saturday so you know for sure. Thanks again for all the support, and I'll see you in the next episode where I might build my house and maybe even head into the Nether.
house.